evening, and welcome to Primetime. The 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft Lottery is now officially open.
It is finally here, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, football is back. And welcome to the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft Lottery. As you just saw, this year our commissioner will be announcing all the pick selections tonight, while we here up in the booth will be providing some analysis on where we think some of these teams might go with their picks. And with that, let's go down to the booth where the commissioner will announce the 14th pick.
The 14th pick of the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to Jeff.
So Jeff, with the 14th overall pick, the Baltimoreans as we know him right now, a little bit interesting, not where we maybe expected, our league champion Mickey avoiding that 14th spot, but here's some things we might know. Jeff is very certain to probably draft his band of brothers once again, that being Tom Brady, LaShawn McCoy, even Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram on a new team this year, maybe Jeff shies away from that, but Jeff always seems to claim that he picks Tom Brady for his wife, but Jeff, we know for a fact that it's because you have a little man crush on him. Don't lie, it's okay. But very interesting. Let's see how the rest of this draft goes, the 13th overall pick.
The 13th pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to Mike.
Okay, so Mike getting the 13th overall pick. That is the first time we have seen chalk tonight as far as what the odds were saying. As you might remember, Captain Chili or Mike, or with the other many nicknames he has, had the 13th overall odds because he came in second last year, if you do not remember that. Now, I think the biggest thing to talk about when it comes to Mike's pick is that he actually, if you remember, made a big trade for Todd Gurley in the middle of the season. Now, with that arthritic knee, will he decide to keep Todd Gurley for the remainder of this upcoming season, or will he throw him back into the pool? It's going to be very interesting to see how that knee holds up for Gurley and how he holds up for Captain Chili's teams.
The 12th pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to Mickey.
And the fall finally ends for our league champion Mickey, getting him the number 12 overall pick in this upcoming draft. Now, as you might remember, Mickey, like a few other teams, gave up a lot of draft picks for 2019 to make a big championship push in the 2018 season. As you might remember, he acquired Ezekiel Elliott mid-season from Dave, giving up what I believe is a few top picks. So it's going to be very interesting to see how his team pans out this season, along with the other teams who gave up picks, Mike and Jack as well. So we're going to see how that works out for them. Is that maybe a trend that we see continue this year in 2019 where teams at the top are giving up even more draft capital just for a few big-time players? Something we definitely need to look out for this upcoming season. And with that, let's go to the commissioner at the podium who has pick number 11.
The 11th pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to Jack F.
So Jack gets the number 11 overall pick in this upcoming draft. Now, some of you may not know this, but Jack is actually a combined 24-2 within the last two regular seasons. Total dominance throughout the regular season. Now, his Achilles heel the last decade or so has been the playoffs, losing 2 championships and really falling short last year in the playoffs, having a great run, utterly to fall short. Now, he is one of the other teams who also gave up a lot of capital in this year's draft. He does have potentially keeping Saquon Barkley with the number 11 overall pick. So that is a great value, having the number 1 overall fantasy player according to a lot of research websites. But we're going to see how he can maybe continue that dominance in the regular season and hopefully into postseason play. With that, let's go to the commissioner at the podium for pick number 10.
The 10th pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to Dave.
So Dave lands the 10th overall pick in the 2019 draft. Now Dave is one of our pristine franchises, historically one of the only 2 teams to have 2 championships in the Mount Fantasy Football League. Has not won a title though since 2016, so they'll probably look to make it a quick turnaround this season in 2019. Now with that, let's go to the podium where the commissioner has the 9th overall pick.
The 9th pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to Pat.
So Pat lands the 9th overall pick in the 2019 draft. Now, Pat had a up and down season to say the least, starting off the year very strongly, having the highest point total actually in week 1. But if you remember, he actually had Kareem Hunt on his roster, well-known beater of women in hotels. And as soon as he was cut from the Kansas City Chiefs, his season kind of came to a crash and burn. Still had a nice solid 4th place finish though, defying the odds here in the draft lottery, getting a better pick than expected. But he'll look to turn that around this season for sure.
The 8th pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to Robbie.
So Robbie lands the 8th overall pick in this year's draft, and Robbie had one of the more surprising seasons, I think, to say the least, last year. Coming out of nowhere, making the playoffs and making a strong push. But as you might remember, Robbie made the championship in his first season back in 2012, has not been able to live up to the hype that I think was built around his franchise once he did enter the league. Hopefully, though, in 2019, he could recapture that lightning in the bottle, maybe even by picking RG3 once again, and hopefully leading him to a championship. With that, let's go to the commissioner with the 7th overall pick.
The 7th pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to Hugh.
As we saw, Hugh landing the 7th overall pick in the 2019 draft, and I think one of the biggest things to look at this season is Hugh actually was one of those teams who got a haul back for players back in 2018. Hugh had a really strong season up until about the midway point when he decided to sell a lot of his really good players. Now, he has that extra 2nd overall pick from Jack, 2nd round pick, excuse me, and he'll look to maybe use that this year to further increase his team's chances of making a nice playoff push. So very, very interesting team to look and keep an eye on this season. And with that, let's go to the commissioner to the podium with the 6th overall pick.
The 6th pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to James D.
So we're down to the top 6 where James D gets the number 6 overall pick, actually falling in line with Chalk once again, having the 6th overall pick odds as well. And James is one of those sneaky teams I think you should look out for this year. This is shaping up to be a great draft. And with that, let's go to the podium with the number 5 overall pick.
fifth pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to James M.
This is crazy, everyone. The number 5 overall pick is actually held by James M. So we have back-to-back James in this year's draft. Unprecedented first time this has ever happened. You do not want to miss this upcoming draft, folks. Now, one of the things I don't want you guys to forget about this year is James M. actually has an extra second and third round pick this year from Mike, as you might remember me talking about. Mike was one of those teams that traded for Todd Gurley. James was that person who sold Todd Gurley. A very, very risky thing to do by selling Todd Gurley, who looked like an MVP candidate last year. Now he's looking like maybe a genius, the boy wonder as we might call him, one of the youngest members of our league. Will he be able to take that extra draft capital and turn that into a championship? We'll see, folks. We're down to the top 4, so let's go to the commissioner to the podium where he'll announce the 4th overall pick.
The 4th pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to Bob.
So the number 4 overall pick goes to Bob, and Bob is one of our more historically prosperous franchises. Unfortunately, though, last year missing the playoffs for the first time in a very long time, it seemed like, and one of the biggest things I think he'll tell you is that last year was a fluke. He'll bounce back this year better than ever. You can look at some bad draft picks, some injuries, some really bad mishaps Bob had last year. Possibly he could bounce back this year. Who knows? I don't like his chances, but we're going to see. So let's go to the commissioner, who has the number 3 overall pick.
The 3rd pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to Luke.
Oh my goodness. So many big things to talk about, but first, Luke getting the number 3 overall pick in this year's draft. And one of the biggest shocks of tonight is that he actually had the odds for the 9th overall pick in this year's draft. By far the biggest gap between actual pick and odds. We actually have a back-to-back father-son pick with Bob at 4 and Luke at 3. Luke having potentially the chance to keep Patrick Mahomes, this past season's MVP, with a top 3 pick as well. That could be very dangerous this year, folks. But the biggest story of tonight, by far, the fix is in. Who knows? The top 2 now consist of Jack M. and John for the 2nd year in a row. Something we have never seen by far, folks. Could the fix be in? Who knows? Let's talk to our commissioner about that as he gives us the number 2 overall pick in this year's draft.
The 2nd pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to John, which means the number 1 pick in the 2019 Mount Fantasy Football Draft goes to Jack M. Congratulations.
Wow, so the top 2 remain the same, but it flip-flopped from last year. John, as you might remember, who has our number 2 overall pick in this year's draft. Back in 2018, he had the number 1 overall pick and selected Le'Veon Bell, who had a wonderful season, if you might remember, having about 0 rushing yards, if I do remember so correctly, and also, unfortunately, keeping Leonard Fournette in the 2nd round. All of those moves looked like great moves at the time. Unfortunately, that did not work out well for John. But the biggest story of tonight is obviously our number 1 overall pick holder, Jack, getting his redemption with the lottery. As of last year, getting number 2 overall pick, now has the number 1 overall pick. Some great lottery work. Maybe we're going to talk to our commissioner. Maybe the fix is in. Who knows? But the biggest story by far is that draft day is very, very soon, very close around the corner, and we'll see you guys in 2019. That's all.